My wife secretly stole $250, $0 from our joint account, then convinced her boss to lie about a supposed business deal. Now we're in court fighting over the house and a $500, $0 inheritance I never knew she was hiding. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, writing about how my wife turned out to be a complete nightmare. Honestly, I thought we had a pretty good marriage, sure. We had our disagreements like any couple, but I never suspected she'd be capable of the kind of betrayal that would blow my world apart. And yet, here I am, trying to piece together what went wrong after discovering she's been cheating on me, stealing money, and lying through her teeth about everything. It all started a few months ago when I noticed her acting strange. Is the kind of woman who's always been a bit bitchy, sarcastic, and sharp-tongued, but recently she'd become downright cold and evasive. She'd leave the house early in the morning and come back late, often with excuses about work or catching up with friends, but I could tell she was hiding something. She'd get defensive if I asked questions, snap at me for no reason, and sometimes she'd even delete her texts or hide her phone when I walked into the room. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but I had that nagging feeling that something was seriously off. I tried to brush it aside, telling myself maybe she was stressed at work or just going through a rough patch. But then I started noticing small things that didn't add up. One evening, I came home early from work because I wasn't feeling well. I decided to surprise her by cooking dinner. When I walked into the bedroom, I saw her phone lying on the nightstand, unlocked. Out of curiosity, I glanced at the screen, and that's when I saw a series of messages that made my stomach drop. They weren't just flirtatious, they were downright explicit. She was having sex with someone else. Her boss, of all people, Mr. Carter. The guy who owns the company she's been working for the past 3 years. I couldn't believe it. My wife, my partner, was cheating on me with her boss, and it was all right there in black and white. I felt my hands tremble as I read the messages, discussing secret meetups, plans to keep their affair hidden, even talking about how they'd cover their tracks. I was furious, but mostly I was hurt. It's one thing to suspect infidelity, but to find proof like that, it shattered whatever trust I had left. I sat there stunned, trying to process what I'd just seen. When came home later that night, I confronted her. I asked her about the messages about Mr. Carter. She looked at me with this icy smile like I was some inconvenienced fool. "Oh, that," said dismissively. "It's nothing, just some stupid flirtation. You're overreacting as usual." She tried to tell me it was all a mistake, that she was just curious or maybe bored, but I wasn't buying it, not anymore. The woman I thought I knew was a liar, a cheat, and apparently a master manipulator. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. That night I couldn't sleep. My mind kept racing. Had she been doing this for months? Who else knew? And most importantly, what was her real motive? Money, power. Did she see me as some kind of fool all along? The questions kept piling up. I knew I had to dig deeper. This wasn't just about infidelity. It was about a web of lies that was slowly unraveling. I decided I'd need to find out everything about the affair, her finances, her plans. I started going through bank statements, emails, anything I could get my hands on. The more I looked, the more I realized this wasn't just a fling, had been planning something bigger. I found out she'd secretly stolen a huge sum of money from our joint account, over $250, $0, and convinced her boss to lie about a supposed business deal. That's when I knew this was more than just a betrayal of the heart. It was betrayal on a financial level I'd never imagined. I was stunned. How could she do this? How could she lie so blatantly? I felt a mixture of rage, sadness, and utter betrayal. I thought we had a normal life, good enough job, a nice house, a future together. Turns out she'd been secretly planning her escape, and I was the last to know. I knew I couldn't let this go. I had to confront her again, but this time I'd be prepared for whatever lies she threw at me. And that's where I am now, trying to process the fact that I married a woman who was capable of this level of deception. It's like my whole life has been a lie, and I honestly don't know what's coming next. The day after I found out about the affair and the stolen money, everything felt like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I was walking around in a daze, trying to piece together what I just learned. had always been sharp-tongued and bitchy, but I never thought she was capable of this kind of cold, calculated deception. She had lied about everything, her whereabouts, her relationships, even her own motivations. She convinced her boss to lie about the business deal, and that money 250, taken from our joint account, was gone without a trace. I didn't even know she was hiding a $500, inheritance from her family either. I kept asking myself, how could I have been so blind? I had trusted her completely. We'd been married for 8 years, and I thought I knew everything about her. But behind that bitchy attitude and that sharp tongue, there was a woman capable of manipulating everyone around her, including me. I remember sitting on the couch that morning, staring at the pile of bank statements, emails, and text messages I'd printed out. My hands trembled as I looked at the numbers, how she'd siphoned money out of our account little by little, convincing her boss to go along with her lies, all while she was sneaking around with Mr. Carter. I still remember the sick feeling in my stomach when I saw that she'd transferred most of the stolen money to offshore accounts. She'd been planning this for months, maybe longer. What hurt most was knowing she'd kept this secret from me, that she'd been lying right to my face. I felt betrayed, furious, and utterly heartbroken. I thought about the life we built together, the vacations, the weekends at the lake, the quiet nights at home. All of that felt like a lie now, a facade she'd been hiding behind while she schemed her escape. I decided I needed to confront her again, but this time I'd be prepared. I wanted to see her reaction when I laid everything out on the table. I called her at work and told her I needed to talk immediately. When she finally came home that evening, she looked annoyed, like I was bothering her. That bitchy smirk was there, the one she always used when she was trying to dismiss me or dismiss my concerns. I said, voice trembling but steady, "I know everything about the affair, about the money, about the lies. I've seen the bank statements, the emails, everything. How could you do this? How could you lie to me for so long?" She rolled her eyes and scoffed. "Oh, please, you're overreacting. It's not a big deal, just some stupid business deal that went wrong. You're making a mountain out of a molehill." I clenched my fists. "Don't lie to me. I know about the offshore accounts, the transfer of money, everything. You stole from us, you stole from me, from our future, and you lied about the affair with Mr. Carter." Her face twisted into something ugly. "You don't understand anything. I did what I had to do. You were never enough, you're boring, and you're always working. I needed excitement, and I found it with him. As for the money, so what? I was trying to get us out of this mess, but you wouldn't listen. You're so damn clueless." Her words hit me like a punch. I felt my chest tighten with rage and despair. I couldn't believe she just admitted everything so casually, like it was nothing. I wanted to scream, to shake her and make her see how deeply she'd hurt me, but I kept my composure. I told her she had to leave, that I was done pretending I didn't know the truth. She laughed, that cold, bitchy laugh, before grabbing her purse and storming out of the house. I stood there stunned, watching her walk away like she didn't care about the chaos she'd caused. I knew I couldn't just let her go. I had to do something. Over the next few days, I started making calls. Lawyers, financial experts, anyone who could help me understand the extent of her deception. The more I dug, the more I realized that her lies went far beyond just cheating. She'd been planning this for months. She convinced her boss to lie about a fake business deal, which was the cover for her theft of the money. She'd hidden a $500, inheritance from her family, which she was planning to use to fund her new life. It was like she'd been building her own escape route, and I was the last to know. I felt so many emotions: anger, sadness, betrayal, and an overwhelming sense of helplessness. I kept asking myself how I could miss the signs, how I'd been so blind to her true nature. She'd always been bitchy and manipulative, but I thought she was just a tough woman. Turns out, she was a master at hiding her true self behind that sharp tongue and bitchy attitude. I knew one thing for sure: I couldn't stay married to her anymore. The trust was completely broken. I had to protect myself and figure out what to do next. That meant confronting her again, but this time, fully prepared to expose everything. I was done being the fool who believed in fairy tales. My life was about to change forever, and I wasn't sure I was ready for what was coming. The confrontation with that evening was something I'll never forget. I had all the evidence laid out, the bank statements, the email exchanges, the transfer records, everything showing her scheme in black and white. I looked her straight in the eyes, feeling a mixture of rage and heartbreak, and told her I knew everything. Her reaction was pure disdain. She scoffed, rolled her eyes, and tried to brush it off like I was overreacting again. "Oh, please," she sneered. "You're making a huge deal out of nothing. You always blow things out of proportion. You're just jealous because I found someone better than you. Mr. Carter is a real catch, and honestly, I deserve to be happy, even if it means bending the rules a bit." That was the moment I realized she wasn't just a liar. She was a manipulative, selfish bitch who thought she could do whatever she wanted. Her words stung more than her actions. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut all over again. I couldn't believe she was trying to justify her betrayal, like I was some naive idiot who didn't deserve the truth. I told her she had to leave the house and that I wanted her out by the end of the week. She looked at me with that same bitchy smirk, as if she enjoyed seeing me suffer. "Fine," she snapped, "but don't think this is the end. You're not going to ruin my life just because you're jealous and insecure. I'm leaving, but I'll take everything I can get from you, money, the house, whatever. You're not the only one who's been planning this." That comment hit me hard. I realized she'd been planning her escape long before I even knew about the affair. She'd been scheming to take everything from me, including the house we bought together, and her inheritance was just the cherry on top. She was already thinking about how to leave me high and dry, with no regard for what I'd be left with. Over the next few days, I started to piece together the full scope of her plans. I found out she'd been secretly working with her boss, Mr. Carter, to set up a fake business deal that would justify the missing money. She convinced him to lie under oath, claiming she was investing in a new venture that would make her a fortune. Meanwhile, she'd been funneling the stolen cash into offshore accounts, planning her escape to some tropical paradise where she could live free from the mess she created. The emotional toll was overwhelming. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and deeply hurt. I kept asking myself how I could have missed the signs, how I'd been so blind to her true nature. She was bitchy, yes, but I thought that was just her personality. Turns out it was part of her manipulation, her way of keeping me off balance so I wouldn't see the truth. I also started feeling a strange sense of numbness, like I was watching my life unravel in slow motion. I'd always believed in marriage, in sticking through the tough times, but now I saw that some people just aren't worth it. Some betrayals cut so deep that the only way forward was to cut ties completely. Deciding to protect myself, I hired a lawyer and started the process of getting a divorce. I also contacted a financial advisor to help me understand the full extent of her theft and figure out how to recover what I could. I knew I wouldn't get everything back, but I had to try. I couldn't let her get away with stealing $500,000, hiding her inheritance, and lying about everything. As I sat there going through all the documents I'd gathered, I realized I'd been living in a kind of fog. I'd trusted her blindly, believing her lies, thinking we had a future. But her actions showed me she never cared about the marriage or me, she only cared about herself. That realization hurt more than anything else. I decided I'd fight for what was mine, for the house we bought together, and for the money she'd stolen. I also promised myself I'd never let someone like her manipulate me again. The pain was raw, but I knew I had to face it head on. I had to be strong because, honestly, I felt like I was falling apart inside. But giving up wasn't an option. Not now. Not ever. The days that followed were a blur of lawyers, financial advisors, and endless nights lying awake thinking about what I'd lost and what I still might lose. Had already moved out, leaving behind a trail of lies and betrayal that I couldn't ignore. Her bitchy attitude, that sharp tongue, and her manipulative ways suddenly made so much sense now that I saw her for what she really was. She had played me like a fiddle, and I was just the fool caught in her web. I remember sitting in my living room, staring at the divorce papers I had just signed, feeling numb. I never thought I'd be that guy, getting divorced after discovering my wife was cheating, stealing, and lying about everything. It was like my entire life had been a carefully constructed house of cards, and she'd knocked it all down with her betrayal. But even in the midst of that chaos, I knew I had to be strategic. I couldn't just let her walk away with everything she wanted. That's when I decided to take control of the situation. I hired a private investigator to dig into her financials and her offshore accounts. Turns out, she'd been funneling money into a series of shell companies and offshore accounts in the Caribbean and Switzerland. I also found out she'd been secretly buying property in her family's name, trying to hide her inheritance, over $500, $0 that I never knew existed. She'd been planning her escape for months, maybe even years. The more I uncovered, the more furious I became. I wasn't just dealing with a cheating wife. I was dealing with someone who had planned to wipe me out financially and start fresh somewhere else. I felt so betrayed, like I'd been living with a stranger all along. The woman I'd married, the woman I thought loved me, was nothing but a con artist and a manipulator. It was a brutal realization. Meanwhile, I was also dealing with the emotional aftermath. I felt anger boiling inside me, anger at her for lying, stealing, and betraying everything we'd built. I felt sadness, too, because I'd lost someone I thought was my partner, my confidant. I'd trusted her with my life, and she'd used that trust to destroy me. There were nights I stayed awake, replaying our memories, vacations, quiet nights, conversations, and feeling nothing but emptiness. But I knew I couldn't let her win. I had to fight to get what was rightfully mine. I filed for divorce, but I also filed a lawsuit to recover the stolen money. I wanted her to be held accountable, not just for cheating, but for robbing me of our shared life. I also learned that she'd been manipulating her boss, Mr. Carter, into lying under oath about the fake business deal. I had all the proof, email exchanges, bank transfers, offshore account details, that would make her face the consequences. It was a long, exhausting process. Court dates, depositions, negotiations. Didn't make it easy. She was bitchy, defiant, and constantly trying to spin her lies. She would throw tantrums in court, insisting she was the victim, that I was trying to ruin her. But I had the evidence, and I was determined to see her pay for what she'd done. In the end, I managed to get a court order to freeze her offshore accounts and seize the assets she'd hidden. The judge awarded me a significant portion of the stolen money, and I was able to keep the house, though it's still in dispute. The inheritance, which she'd tried so hard to keep hidden, was finally declared part of our marital assets, and I was awarded my fair share. Looking back, I realized this whole ordeal has changed me. I used to believe in marriage, in sticking through thick and thin. But now I see that some people are just fundamentally dishonest, selfish, manipulative, and willing to destroy everything for their own gain. I've learned that trust is fragile, and once it's broken, it's nearly impossible to repair. If I could give anyone advice from my experience, it's this: pay attention to the signs. If your partner starts acting secretive, defensive, or evasive, do ignore it, trust your instincts. And if you discover they're cheating or stealing from you, don't wait to confront them. Gather evidence, protect yourself legally, and fight back. Because no amount of love or loyalty can fix a betrayal this deep. I'm still trying to put my life back together, but I know one thing for sure: I will never let anyone manipulate or betray me like this again. I've been through hell and back, but I'm still standing, and that's what matters most. After the court case wrapped up and I finally got some semblance of justice, I felt a strange mix of relief and emptiness. Was out of my life physically, but the emotional scars lingered. I kept thinking about all the moments I'd missed: her bitchy smirks, her manipulative lies, the way she'd convinced her boss to lie under oath. It was a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. The betrayal went so deep that I started questioning everything I'd ever believed about her, about us. The house, which I fought so hard to keep, still felt cold and empty without her. I'd walk through the rooms, memories flashing in my mind: our first date, the vacations, the quiet nights. All of it was tainted now. I'd never see it the same way again. I knew I had to move on, but I didn't know how. My trust was shattered, and I felt so betrayed that I wondered if I'd ever feel normal again. In the aftermath, I focused on rebuilding my life. I hired a therapist to help me process everything: the anger, the sadness, the rage. I couldn't let her steal my happiness completely. Slowly, I started working out, going to therapy, and reconnecting with friends who had been there for me during the worst times. It was a long road, but I knew I had to take it step by step. One of the biggest challenges was dealing with the financial mess she left behind. I had recovered a good portion of the stolen money, but there were still loose ends. I had to continue fighting to recover the inheritance she'd hidden, and I had to ensure she couldn't come back and take more. I also made peace with the fact that I might never get all of it back. Sometimes, the damage is too deep, and the best thing you can do is move forward with what you have. I also started dating again, though cautiously. I didn't want to jump into anything serious right away, but I realized I needed human connection to heal. The scars are still there, but I'm learning to live with them. I've become more cautious about who I trust and more aware of the red flags I'd ignored before. Looking back, I see that this experience has taught me a lot. I've learned that some people are capable of incredible deception, and that trust needs to be earned, not given blindly. I've learned that standing up for yourself and fighting for what's right is essential, even if it's painful at first. And I've realized that, no matter how much betrayal you face, life can still go on. You just have to be willing to pick up the pieces and rebuild. To anyone going through something similar, I'd say this: don't let the betrayal define you. Yes, it will hurt, and yes, it's unfair. But you have the strength to get through it. Seek help if you need it, lean on your friends, and don't be afraid to stand up for yourself. The road to healing isn't straight or easy, but it's worth it. You deserve better than someone who manipulates and steals from you. I'm still healing, still learning, but I know one thing for sure: I'll come out of this stronger. I'll rebuild my life on my own terms, and I'll never let anyone take advantage of me again. That's the biggest lesson I've learned. Trust is fragile, but resilience is stronger. And I intend to live by that now. Looking back now, I realize how close I came to losing everything: my marriage, my trust, my sense of security. Betrayal was a blow so deep I thought I'd never recover. But somehow I did. I learned that even in the face of deception and heartbreak, there's a way to pick yourself up and forge a new path. The experience hardened me, but it also made me more cautious, more aware of the red flags I'd ignored for too long. One thing I've come to understand is that people can be incredibly good at hiding their true selves until it's too late. Was a master manipulator. Bitchy, yes, but also cunning and cold. She used her personality as a shield, hiding her greed and her lies behind that sharp tongue. It's terrifying to realize how easily someone you trust can turn out to be your greatest enemy. Now, I focus on rebuilding my life piece by piece. I've started a new job, moved into a smaller apartment, and begun to trust again carefully. I've learned to listen to my gut, to recognize the red flags early, and to never ignore my instincts. I also made peace with the fact that some things can't be fully fixed. The damage was done, but I refused to let it define me. The financial fallout was perhaps the most difficult part. Recovering the stolen money, fighting her in court, and dealing with her attempts to hide assets drained me emotionally and financially. But I fought hard, and I won some measure of justice. The inheritance she tried to conceal was finally awarded to me, and the court ordered her to pay back the stolen funds. It wasn't everything I'd hoped for, but it was enough to start rebuilding. Most importantly, I learned the value of self-respect. I realized I deserved honesty, loyalty, and respect, things never truly gave me. Her betrayal taught me that I need to be vigilant, to protect myself, and to never let anyone manipulate me again. I've become more cautious about who I trust and more committed to my own well-being. To anyone reading this who might be going through something similar, I want you to know this: it hurts. It's supposed to hurt. But you're stronger than you think. Don't let betrayal crush you. Seek help if you need it. Lean on the people who care about you, and remember that you're worth more than someone's lies and greed. The road to healing is long, but it's also necessary. In the end, you'll come out stronger, more resilient, more aware, and more prepared for whatever life throws at you. As for me, I'm no longer the naive husband who believed his wife was perfect. I've learned to see the signs, to stand up for myself, and to trust again, carefully. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know this: I'll never let anyone manipulate or betray me like that again. I've come to accept that sometimes life teaches us the hardest lessons, but those lessons make us better. And I choose to keep moving forward, stronger and wiser than before.